Hey, in this video we're going to focus on progressive blur and how to make it in Figma using generator. We will be recreating this thing that you see right here. This can be found in the generator plugin. In the help menu, in tutorial examples under loops. This is the looped noise example. And then here right above it you have the progressive blur example, which shows you a more basic version of that same thing. And so this is what we'll start with, and then we'll get on to the more advanced one. In fact, this is not hard at all. So we will start traditionally with an ellipse. Let's give it a color. Let's go with white. Let's make it centered around the coordinates, and I'll make them small, something like, I'll give them a radius of 5 and 5, something like that. Then I'm going to plug this into the style. And so I have my first ellipse. Then, as is tradition, I will move, rotate, and repeat. I will move the rotate all the way over here to already keep the graph clean. The move will be here, and then the repeat goes down. To rotate, I need to use a range from 0 to 360 from start. Then I plug this into the angle, and then I close the loop. I disable move space, and so now when I move this anywhere, I get a nice pattern of circles. If I want more, I just increase the count. Let's say I want 50. Well, let me then move them like this and say that I want 100. There we go, that's tolerable. Now there's a few things we're going to do here. First of all, the whole progressive blur thing, it's just the same as progressive anything. So let me give you an example. Right now the radius of these circles is 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sequence, start with 5 and increase by 1 every time. So now when I plug this into the width, what happens is that every next circle that gets created has a larger radius. So now we can do the same exact thing with layer blur. So let's see, we'll bring this back to the original size. What we need to do is we need to go over here and in effects create a layer blur, combine it with the color by holding Control when you press enter or when you create it in the menu. So right now you see that they've all become a little bit blurred because the default value is 4. But if I now take a sequence starting at 0 and adding 1 every time and plug that in here, what happens is that now you get your progressive blur. Now it's important to note that it's not real progressive blur. It's not like you're applying some kind of an effect over the existing content. So it's fake to a degree. But if your situation is broken up into a repeating pattern of some kind, or there's like an object like a circle in this case, which just repeats, then it's really, really easy to fake, but it's not real. Right? So it's just important to keep that in mind. And so instead of a sequence, what I would like to do in this case is to use a wave to get to the same result as in the example. So I'm going to plug that into here. That's a sine wave, that's fine. In the case of a wave, I need to explicitly loop it with this. This is taken, so I select both of them. I combine them by holding Control. And then I plug both of them in here through the combine. There you go. Now, because you have to visualize the sine wave, what's happening right now is that half of it is above 0, half of it is below 0. So what we need to do is there's a bias parameter, which in our case needs to bring it all above 0 so that it's from 0 to 1 and not from -1 to 1. So as we increase the bias, you will see that less and less of the ring becomes sharp. This takes a while, so I have to pause. Here's 70. And so here's 100. And this is exactly the effect that I had achieved in the tutorial file. The only thing is this is upside down from that, so we set the offset to 50, and that just offsets where the wave is. So there you go. There's the progressive blur. Just so that we have it in a frame, let's do that already while the graph is not too complicated. So I'm going to add a frame. I will give it a default black color, but I'm not going to set it as yet. I will set the position to absolute. And then for now, there's no direct manipulation, but there will be in the future and hopefully pretty soon. But for now, I need to do it like this. So I'm just going to set the frame like so. Then I will make it wider. And the reason I'm not adding the color is because I want to see both of them. And I don't want to care which one is selected first when I activate them. So I'm just going to do this. Then I will plug this repeat into the objects. I will plug the color into the style, and I will double click the frame so that that's all I see. And there you go. That's my result. And this is something I can already export, work with, etc. So now we can start playing with this. For example, let's increase the frequency. 2, 3, 4, and so on. Let's do like 20, see what that gives us. Now this is already some kind of an effect thing. Let's do like 12. And there you go. I published something like this on Twitter recently. So I mean, there's like very easily you get quite a few effects already, but let me bring this back to 1. Because the next thing I would like to explain is how to do cyclical noise, so looped noise. So you can use this noise node right here, and that'll give you really good noise, and you can change the scale of the noise and so on. Whoops, I accidentally double-clicked the background. Let me bring the frame back into focus. So you can change the scale of the noise, but the noise starts and ends at a place where you can't really predict it. You know, that's why it's noise. So how do you make a looped noise? So for example, I would like to have, in this case, the blur sort of be noisy around the circle, but always feed back into itself gradually, so there's no break. All right, so the way you do that is by making the noise manually. And here's how that works. We take a random, and let's say that we're gonna go from 0 to, like, what's the maximum noise we want? Let's say 100. So the default values are fine. Now, I'm going to get some number of these values. So I'll say repeat. Let's say I have five random values now. Let me say list to see what's in there. And now what I would like to do to make this list cyclical, because this will be the list of values for my parameter, is I need to just take the first value and add it to the end. So I will take this repeat. I will select from list. Where's my select from list? Right here. I'll just plug it in like so. And because I want the first value, I'll leave it at 0. I will combine the two, because now I want the output of the repeat plus the first value. And so now if I plug this into the list, you see that it's different. Why is it different? Because of how the repeat works, when I select something, this gets pulled again. So what I need to do instead of the select here is let me delete this combine, and let me just put a cache. So what the cache does is it stops anything to the left of it from giving new values. But as you can see, there are the 3 dots here, which means that you can plug this into a repeat and have the repeat at the end of a loop force the cache to reset and to give the next set of values. So we'll see how this works. Now that we have the cache, I will, from this cache, take a select from list, and I'll take the 0 from here, and then I'll take the cache and the select, and I will combine this. Now when we look at the insides, we see that it's 36, something, something, 36, right? And that's because of this cache. I still haven't made a dedicated tutorial about loops and caches and all of this, but there's a little bit in the generator basics tutorial. So now that I have my list of points, I want to apply it to this circle. I have recently improved the way the number interpolate node works. And the way that works is you can either plug in any number of values and then just interpolate between them, or you can plug in a list directly. And so in this case, I'm going to take all of these points that I have in the combine. And now, just so that you see what's going on, if I plug in the output, you see that if it's a 0, I start at 36 because that was the first number. And then as I progress through all these numbers, it interpolates through them. And then I come back to 36 when I finish. The only thing is I want to make this not linear but cosine, because that will just mean that the slopes always match at the joins. So now that I have this interpolate, I got to gradually go from 0 to 100 around the circle. Where do I take the layer blur? I take it from my wave. So in this case, I need to get rid of the wave. I will set this to 0. And I will bring this over here. And this interpolate will actually feed the radius, like so. All right. But I need to move the percentage of this interpolate with a range because we're going around a circle. So it's gonna go from 0 to 100 because it's percent. I will say start. I will plug this into here, into the percent. And then because it's a range, it needs to go into this combine. So now you can see that it's noisy. It's more noisy here than here, but you can also, I think, see that it's looped. But let's just check. What if I increase the number of points? Yeah, it still looks looped. The only thing is it's very blurred. So what I'm going to do is the random has a bias parameter where I can take and just say I want more smaller values or I want more larger values. So in this case, I'm going to go all the way to -100 to get more smaller values. And this way we can see some sections of the ring where there's now a lot of sharpness. And now we can play with the seed. So we can just randomize it and see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, this is now noisy, and we can really get a sense of that by adding like 50 points. So there you go, it's all noisy. But it always joins up really nicely because we have that set of numbers that we created, and then they join into each other with a cosine when they get interpolated. So there's the noise. One more thing I would like to show. Let me turn this off for a second and bring back my wave. So let me move this down. And plug this into here directly. The fact that this is plugged in doesn't matter, but I get my wave. All right. And then I need to bring this back to the way it was 50% and what was that, bias 100. As you can see, there are gaps between the circles because actually there's an equal gap between all the circles. The gaps are even everywhere. But these circles are all blurred. So perhaps it will make more sense to have fewer circles here on the bottom where it's more blurred and then more circles here on the top so that they be more densely packed. And the way we do that is that, see this range right here that drives the rotation of the circles? What we can do is we can add a bias node. And what the bias node does, and we can do that like so, just replug it in to the angle. And also we need to copy the start to the min and the end to the max. And so now this bias node will let you sort of massage the output by either forcing it to be biased more to one side, to the other side, or stretching it more towards the outsides, or squashing it more towards the inside. So that's bias and spread. Now, what I want to do in this case is I want to... Actually, I'm not even sure how this is going to work because we're doing a range, so let me just play around and see. Okay, so it's not going to be biased because that's only in one direction, so I'll leave this. So let's try spread and see what that does. All right, so this is exactly what we need. Now, here you have a lot more circles, and here you have a lot fewer circles. Because it's turned from how I would like it to be, what I'm going to have to do is kind of rotate the whole thing. So first of all, right after the repeat, I'm going to add a rotate. And then if I set 90 here, it'll put this on top how I want it. So now I'm not getting as many points down here because I'm not going to see them anyway, they're blurred, and then I'm getting a lot more here, so then it's a more consistent ring. Now, the only thing I need to fix is that this wave has been rotated from what I have. So if I re-enable it, it's going to be over here. And what I need to do is I need to set it to something like 75%. No, 25%. There we go. So this is exactly what, and then maybe the bias a little bit back. Yeah. So this is what I now have. All of this stuff. So first of all, it's darker because there are fewer circles there. But also, if you do actually want some kind of progressive blur, and then you do want a more solid ring, in this case, on top, then you can do that. And if we decrease the amplitude, then it becomes a little bit more understandable and visible. But there you go. This way you can control. So we have the same amount of circles. Figma is doing the same, and Generator and Figma are doing the same amount of work. But you have a much smoother curve up here. And then you can increase that more if you need to. So, but for now, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of the bias because I don't need it. I'm just going to reconnect this directly. All right, and I can re-plug in my interpolated noise into the layer blur. Let me reduce the number of points, something like 10. There we go. To make it more like the other example though, what I would need to do is to scale this ellipse a little bit. I think I need to change its height. No, I need to change its width. There you go. So this is starting to look like an eyeball, but I would like to apply a cyclical noise to the radius, or sort of the height of each stick, but also to the thickness of each stick. So to do that, what I need to do is copy this twice. So this is going to be once for the height of the stick, and this is going to be another time for the width of the stick. So because I know I need to do this, I'm just going to plug these ranges into the combine right now. Wait, what am I doing? The range. All right. And then I need to see, so right now the radius, the width is 69, and I want it to go from, let's say, 0 to 69. We'll just be cheesy about it. So I will remove this bias here. I will say 0 to 69. All right, and I will run this into the width. So now I have some variation of the heights, but I'm guaranteed that they're cyclical. And then I do the same thing here. I have 5, so I'm going to run them from, let's say, 0 to 5. Why not? Set the bias to 0 and plug this interpolate into the height. All right, so I can now Control A to select everything and Shift R to randomize everything. So now we're getting some interesting variation in all of these parameters for one color, and they're all cyclical, and you can be sure of that. If you don't want these gaps, you can just go over here to both of them and say that the width is going to be minimum 10 and the height is going to be minimum, let's say, 2. And then so here you see that it never goes too thin, and in this case it should also never go too thin. Yeah, there you go. But actually I did like it with 0 because that was more interesting. So this is pretty much the end of one color, right? It has a cyclical noise on 3 parameters, one of which is the blur. So you get this fake progressive blur. The only thing left to do to match the other picture is to, I don't need this rotate, by the way, this was for the wave, so I can get rid of it. There's less calculation. And I want to repeat this. Now, first it's going to be slow because the default count is 5. I actually need to repeat it 3 times for red, green, and blue. It's transferring 500 objects to Figma, so this takes a while. You're getting some nice noise effects, but that's not what we want. We want to deactivate everything because this is going to be way too slow otherwise. So 0, I'll set the count to 3. And you know what? I'm going to set this to like 20. And then this way I can actually see what's going on. There we go. So it's fast. I'll just look at the frame directly then. Now I want to repeat this 3 times, and every time I want it to have a different color. So I'm going to bring this down here just to organize things. I will define my colors. So first of all, I want red. That is not even close to red, but I'm just going to type red. And then I'm going to say green and blue. That's not the green I want. I want this. And then blue, I'll just do it with hex. Then I select them and I say iterate. That'll just select them one by one in a circle, but since there's only 3, it'll just give me 1, 2, and 3. And then I plug this into the color, which is right here. And you can see that every circle now has a different color. That's because this needs to be looped to this outer repeat. And once I do that, it only gets a new color at the end of each loop. Now, right now I can see that they're sort of overlapping each other. So they haven't, nothing is changing. And the reason this is not working is because over here we have a cache, which is stopping regeneration of all of this. Which means that we need to select these 3 caches, combine them, and then run the result of this combine into here. But we need to now combine these 2. And then replace this connection. Or rather, close the loop, but now for 2. So now, as you can see, we have 3 sets of ellipses that are now overlapping. Let me add more of them. So instead of 20, let me take 100. So now there's going to be 300 objects. Wait, shouldn't it be 301 for 300s and frame? Something is fishy. Oh, it's because it's too small, so I'm guessing I skip it. So there you go. This is almost like that picture. The only thing is the blending mode is normal, so they're fighting with each other, and we want them to add to each other. The way we do that is after this repeat, this is like the end of one color. What we need to do is we need to say apply style. Now apply style will either replace, you have this checkbox over here, or it'll add to the styles the objects already have. And in this case, what I want to add is here in the shapes menu, in effects, layer blend. So I'm going to set the blend mode right here to plus lighter, because I know that that's the one that adds all the colors together. And then I'll just run that into style. And so now each layer should have that blend mode, and they should blend with each other a lot better. So I think at this point, what we want to do is maybe, and this is going to be a little bit slow, but maybe add some more objects. I'm just going to say 150. This will take some time. See, that's pretty cool. And now at this point, we can just do a Control A, select everything, and just Shift R until we find a variation that makes us happy. All right, so I'm gonna say that this one makes me happy because they take a long time. This is 400 objects. So yeah, this is basically it. As always, if you want to support me, if you like the work that I'm doing, the best way to do that is to buy a generator subscription. It's less than $1 a day, and it'll help me keep making all the cool stuff that I'm making. Thanks for watching.